Good evening and welcome to my favorite listeners to The Dreaming Prophet. Tonight we're dedicated to bringing you the truth that the upright ape was never meant to know. But please be informed that The Dreaming Prophet takes no legal liabilities for explosions, implosions, emotional breakdowns, or existential crises that result from hearing the false god's name spoken aloud. If you are concerned, please contact your doctor and rest assured that Course Insurance is always offering free talk therapy at all hours of the night and day. So lean back in your chair, relax, and remember, we speak as one as you listen to tonight's show. My name is Lavanya.
And I'm Astro.
And we'll be your host for tonight.
This is a Blackout Club show for Blackout Club players with no speculation, all lore, and a focus on the known facts. Our topic of the day today is the Daimons. We'll be talking about the Daimons' spheres of influence and what they're like in the game.
So our content warnings for today are the same as they are for every episode, so we'll start off with that. There is the warning of general horror and the discussion of children being harmed, kidnapped, and occasionally murdered. Specific to this episode is the mention of the Cull, which is a historical genocide that occurred in Red Acre, in which the Idare's hosts were hunted down and killed. As always, the friendly reminder is that The Dreaming Prophet is a spoiler-heavy show dedicated to discussing lore. If you are looking forward to finding out this information in-game, then exit out now because we're about to rip into all of it. So, as Astro said earlier, the topic of the day is Daimons, who are the gods within the game that can speak to players and are the cause of all the spooky bullshit that's going down. As far as we know, in-game, as of right now, the most powerful of these Daimons, and also the oldest, is Speak as One. Keep in mind, that's a command that is not just a name. They are the main antagonist of the game, and as you heard probably from the emphasis on the pronoun there, they are one of the gods that uses non-standard pronouns. Speak as One's entire thing is that they are everyone in Red Acre. They are hive mind daemon that is composed of the memories and the thoughts and the beliefs of every single person who lives inside of the town, even the kids. So they use they pronouns, but they can also be referred to as he or she, because technically, Speak as One is everyone. So as I said, Speak as One is technically everyone inside of Red Acre. And as far as we know right now, Red Acre exists as an extension of them. This can be seen in the fact Course communities and the Course logo covers everything in the game. And if Red Acre is Speak as One, then Course is the backbone that holds it all up. Because Course is the company that employs most of the adults within Red Acre. Belle's mother is employed by it. The logo is everywhere. It runs the daycare, it runs the utilities company. As far as we can tell, it may even run the town. What's fascinating is that the more you look into what Course is and where their reach stretches, the more you'll find it throughout the game. When Nahali and Siobhan are discussing their insurance in the baby journal entries, they mention that Course insurance may not cover their IVF if they're not careful about the donor. If you read further journal entries that deal with Siobhan's brother arriving, the police report implies a certain involvement with the Speak as One cult as well. Course's involvement in the town can even be seen in the Whisper Twins dialogue, in which they note that Red Acre is a lot more diverse than the other towns around them in Virginia. You can even notice with the Whisper Twins that they mention that Course brought many of the families into Red Acre, and that it is a great deal more diverse than the rest of Virginia around them. We don't know exactly what Course is beyond a front for the Speak as One cult, but what we do know is that they've got their nasty little fingers in pretty much everything. So Course is one aspect of Speak as One, but it's not the only one. It's important to note and keep establishing that Speak as One is not just the voice of the daemon itself. Speak as One is a title that encompasses a great deal of things throughout the game. So it's important to keep noting as we cover Speak as One as a topic. Speak as One is not just the name of the daemon. It is not just the name of the organization or the cult. It is a command. And it is a command that encompasses all of the individuals who are part of the Speak as One hive mind, and who coincidentally are our enemies in the game. We can divide these out into the sleepers, who are adults who may or may not be into this cult consensually. It's important to note that sleepers are essentially just the adults who have proven able to hear the song. We don't know the specifics on why some people are able to hear it and why others are not, but not every adult within Red Acre is capable of hearing it and being controlled by the song. When you can hear the song, then when you go to sleep, you'll black out and you'll be taken over by Speak as One to serve whatever weird purposes that they have in mind for you. When you can't hear the song, you actually get to sleep. The second enemies are the lucids, who, unlike the sleepers, are in this 100% consensually, or at least mostly consensually. They are adults who are awake while they are still involved with the song, and they are the direct hosts of Speak as One. We don't know exactly what this means, but what we do know is that it keeps them awake when everyone else in the town is asleep, and even when they want to go to sleep, and that it is a slightly hazardous thing to be a lucid. They refer to sleepers as constantly being in pain, but the lucids are the ones who note that their bodies are being worn down and that they may be at risk of serious harm. Why? We're not exactly sure yet, but sleeper or lucid, being involved in the song doesn't necessarily seem pleasant. We covered this last episode, but the song is basically an unknown song that everyone mind melds into it. When you are underground in the maze, you can actually, if you go and stand in a corner where no one can see you, close your eyes and hold your breath, you can actually hear the song playing around you. It's loudest in locations like the plexus, and in some areas like dream therapy, you almost can't hear it at all. Even in the boxcar, you can hear the song playing, and the only reason that the children who serve as the player characters of the Blackout Club aren't actually asleep is due to the intervention of an unknown daemon. The last part of Speak as One is the voice. Now, the song itself is the daemon, which is also known as Speak as One, and what the voice is two adults, one man and one woman, who speak as one and who serve as the direct hosts of Speak as One, the daemon. You can see an example of them speaking in the Madishaw incident report, where you can hear them talking to a lucid about Madishaw breaking into the horse industries.
Now, if Speak as One is trying to mind meld everyone into the song, the idea is their direct opposite. The idea focuses on rebellion and individuality. When you look at his tag on the altar, you can see a quote from our very own Isabella Maddie Shaw, who says, "Dad tore my ear off, said I should never sneak out again, etc. But some new voice said, 'Hey, dare you to do it anyway.'" He's referred to as the adversary by Speak as One and company, but the other voices call him brother. He refers to himself by he/him pronouns right now, but he used to use she/her pronouns, and maybe more beyond that. Speak as One doesn't agree with this and often calls him it. He created spoken language in order to keep secrets. He's talked about this a few times. Speak as One, conversely, has been trying to use what they refer to as the old language, the old tongue, which is dance. All of the gestures that we as players do are part of this old tongue, but it's not very secretive. Anyone who can see you can understand what you're saying. The Idare realized that this wasn't good for keeping secrets, and this is where spoken language came in. With spoken language, you can whisper, and if you're not in earshot, too bad. The Idare once had hosts in Redacre, but they were all destroyed in what we refer to as the Cull. The Cull is the source of the fragments you can find in-game. All of the places where his past hosts were killed now have fragments in them, and you can find them above ground and below ground in many different areas on the map. We have confirmed that at least one of the murders in the Cull was covered up and made to look like a suicide. However, we know that isn't true. The cult directly targeted these people and tried to get them out of the way. After this event, the Idare was shattered. He was very weakened. The Idare has said in Godtalks that his fragments are essentially to him as Speak as One's watchers are to them. Through his fragments, he can remember select things that those hosts choose to share with him. The Idare has spoken in a few dreams, but you may not have realized that you've heard him. He originally only spoke backwards. The audio had to be recorded and reversed to understand what he was saying. And although he has spoken in dreams a few times, he's been significantly more active in God encounters throughout the game.
Alright, and that leads us into the second best god of all, Die for You. The first and most important thing to know about Daifryu is that he is the daemon of martyrdom. He focuses heavily on sacrifice to the detriment of literally everything else. The idea wants you to survive and be rebellious and be yourself. Speak as one wants you to conform at all costs and stop being such a little fucking individual. All of the gods have their own motivations and their own desires in this game that they are trying to push to be satisfied, but Daifryu is the only demon whose focus is entirely on the play. It makes him pretty unique. Unfortunately, this is not necessarily great for the player. What we've heard of Daifryu from the other daemons so far has largely been focused on the fact that Daifryu runs hard with his hosts and with his followers. While he's one of the friendliest of the gods, and he is super interested in helping players find and pursue their passions, the problem comes towards the end of that. Like any good monkey's paw, Daifryu will support you to the very end, hard emphasis on the end, because when push comes to shove, if you're not willing to die for your ideals, he's just not that into it. Daifryu is one of the gods that has been the most verbal in dreams, and in his dreams, he's constantly coaxing and pushing and cajoling players towards what they're passionate for and what they're passionate enough to die for. Daifryu ultimately wants you to die. Martyrdom is his province, and it doesn't matter what it's for. It can be for your friends, for your parents, for preserving the sanctity of your individuality in the face of this cold, cruel, conformist world. It could be for your shoes. He doesn't care as long as you're willing to go out there and get shot for it. According to the other gods, Daifryu's followers burn out quickly and they burn out hard. But some would say that's perfectly fine. The Idea's followers also die frequently, and SAO's followers live forever. But Daifryu's followers, when they die, they're always here to make a point.
Dance for Us was once named Dance for Me when she was more selfish, as she says in a dream. On the altar, her featured quote says, "I guess it wants thrills, woke up still buzzed or eyes like black holes. Bite marks all over me, but yo, I had $2,000 in my gym shorts." That's from SC Ryder. Her hosts have been caught dancing in the woods and attracting attention from sleepers, which then gets passed on to the lucids, and then to the voice. We can see this in the dancing sickness log in the journals. Gwen also notes that if you follow Dance for Us, someone should tell her to chill the fuck out just a little bit. Back in the beta period, she had a period of time where she issued a challenge to players asking them to bring her music, and some of them did. As a result, all players in the game now have the gesture, the gift of dance. Interestingly, her time in the limelight has not yet ended. Her symbol is being used in the recent dance recording mission, though circumstances around this are unknown at the time. We don't know who's placing it there, or why, or what it actually does to the sleepers that step into it. But after they step on the symbol, they're compelled to dance, even to the detriment of their health, possibly even to death. More on this after a word from our sponsors.
Do you want to make more money? Of course you do. So call this number back to find out how easy it is to train right here in Red Acre for a better career. With Chorus, dozens of men and women have doubled their salaries without batting an eye, literally. Starting your Chorus career is so easy that you can and will be doing it in your sleep. Choose from duties like composition, construction, dance performance, secretarial work, childcare, and more. Make this important call right now.
So, now that we're back from our commercial break, I'm excited to say that tonight on The Dreaming Prophet, we are having the first of what may be many exciting guest features. So to wrap up our Daemon discourse, or to start some new ones, we are going to introduce 2 exciting new people to the podcast for this episode. The first of these people is Archer. Say hi, Archer.
Hello, hello, hello. My name is Archer, and I have been invited to come and talk about some of the gods here on this podcast. And let me tell you, I have a lot to say. First of all, it's going to be like, the measure cuts, and then my personal favorite, the 8th god, which let me tell you about the 8th god. He is hands down one of the most fantastic, best gods that you can all...
Xaviul, master of sarcasm and sacrifice.
Wow.
We're just gonna move on.
Rude. All right, so since I guess we're not going to go on about the eighth god here, let's go ahead and start off with the Measure Cuts. The Measure Cuts is a really interesting god to talk about. Some of his main themes is precision and knowledge and skepticism. The Measure Cuts is very commonly associated with science, especially with his themes of knowledge and precision. This fits in pretty well with him. However, he has actually been around since before the advent of science itself. Back in the olden days, he actually used to be a goddess of blacksmithing, which makes me believe that he is less associated with science and a lot more with the precision that comes with creating things out of metal and creation in general, and the knowledge that comes with that.
He also helped invent the swirly, if you know what I mean.
Get out, bully. Right now, his current host cannot be shoved into a toilet and swirlied because his host is dead. His current host actually is a scientist who used to study the voices and refused to host the Measure Cuts until he died because he did not want the Measure Cuts in his head to influence and potentially bias his work. The Measure Cuts actually respected him heavily for his dedication to his research, so he was pretty okay with this. Another thing that plays into his precision as well is that he actually dislikes slang. In one of the public dreams that is out there in the game, he actually gets very, very angry when a user uses slang at him. You know, saying like, oh, you're so chill, or chill out. And the Measure Cuts just hates it. Says he's gonna vomit in his mouth because he's a dramatic person. I don't know why you would say that. Like, disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. So he is not a fan of slang and prefers words that are more precise, that do not have double meanings. With TMC's interactions with the other gods, he actually used to be quite close with Speak as One, and has confirmed that he has worked with Speak as One to create the experiment currently going on in Redacre. This experiment, we still don't have a lot of information on it, but after the Measure Cut helped set everything up, Speak as One then ousted them from Redacre, and now he's no longer allowed around. With his relationship with the Idare, that's also another point of interest. The Idare, when he was first shattered, a lot of the gods stood by, and the Measure Cuts was one of them, from what the Idare had said to me once in an encounter. In some current dreams that have been distributed out to various players, it seems to be that the Measure Cuts actually regrets this. The Measure Cuts also one of the only gods that has not had an in-person voice encounter with a player. The Measure Cuts is also one of the only gods to voice contempt for the fact that he has to rely on children as hosts, especially in this upcoming war that he has mentioned in a dream. In a dream asking if a world war has happened in this universe, he said that that is not the war that we should be worrying about.
In Her Teeth is also similarly taking a somewhat scientific approach, but not to the same things that the Measure Cuts is studying. In Her Teeth wants to know more about death, and specifically wants to know if voices can die. Her primary domain is death and power. When you interact with the altar, the quote given for her says, "It, knows how I'm going to die, says it won't be scary or painful if I go with her." From A. Mokel. In past dreams, she has offered the kids power in exchange for their loyalty to her. She's also instructed players to tie up and leave stalkers to her, and is known for being grim and morbidly curious. Somewhat recently in the game, players have been instructed to find and retrieve dead doves that have been left around the map, bloodied and disfigured, with missing heads. In Her Teeth has confirmed that doves specifically are sacred to her, as is the color white in other parts of the world, and has said that this action, this bloodying of the doves and leaving them around quite obviously to be found, is an insult against her, and that whoever did it may also be declaring war on another daemon. White symbolizes death and mourning in China, India, Korea, and the Middle East, among others, and so it can be inferred this is probably what she means. She shares hosts with Laugh Last, and Laugh Last says that they're married. In Her Teeth doesn't seem to agree.
What's a good marriage without murder threats?
And gaslighting. You can't forget the gaslighting. Wow, that's all a bit grim and also a bit nerdy. So let's go on to somebody who's actually a little bit fun for once.
Speak as one?
Boo.
Laugh Last. We're not all about that communal hive mind right now. Laugh Last, whose main themes are humor, a little bit of betrayal, maybe, and also kind of memes. When he first started off earlier on, he was a lot more sinister. He really only believes that it's funny if somebody else gets hurt in a joke, which I think we can all agree with, right?
Yes, actually.
Absolutely.
That's the spirit. He's kind of devolved a little bit into more base humor, like tight sniffing and asses, but I like to believe that deep down inside, he's still that same horrible dude that's willing to drop a piano on you just so he can laugh at the blood splatter.
Now let me interrupt briefly to say friendly reminder that Corpse offers up free therapy services 24/7 over the phone at your friendly local old growth location of choice.
He was once described as being the comic relief for the voices by the idea, but, there's only so much you can take of being the laughing stock before you need to get a few laughs off yourself. He has claimed that In Her Teeth is his wife. In Her Teeth, seems to have a little bit of problem with that and makes some untoward claims that Laugh Last might have led her astray in her beliefs and her domains and all that. But I like to believe that she's just confused. Who really wants to listen to her anyway? And while we're on the topic of untoward comments towards Laugh Last, the idea claims that once upon a time Laugh Last betrayed him and might have maybe led to the shattering. Laugh Last claims that all he really did was stick out a leg back when the idea was a holier-than-thou little speak-as-one light gallivanting around to play rebel. I mean, there's probably still some bitter feelings there, but it's probably mutual.
It's a shame that we'll never speak to Laughs Last to find out.
Wow! He is just very busy right now, and he will get to me in his own time, but I'm sure he's I'm number one on the list.
Shall I tell you about which list you're on?
The sacrifice list?
Yes, to Murder God.
Ugh. Do we really have to give him a section?
Yes, we do. I'm sorry, there's just no...
He's not on the table. It's really like he's not a Daemon at all.
Listen. You're gonna get eaten.
We're feeding every mouth at the table so they don't eat us.
Yeah, but he's like the dog underneath the table begging for scraps.
Whoa!
Do you hate animals?
So about a list that I think you're on here, let's talk about Murder God, or as he's most likely known as, is the 8th god. He's a god dedicated to ambition, blood sport, strength, and competition.
Rabies!
No, not rabies. But guess what list you're always at the top of, Xaviul? The leaderboard, and stalkers caught. And guess what the 8th god really likes? He likes strength. He likes ambition. He likes competition. The Murder God has a huge interest in people who show ambition, strength, and competition. He's only very recently revealed himself to us in the form of a couple of Godtalks with some select players. However, it turns out through the discovery of some people transcripting old dreams is that he has been around for much longer. He just hasn't spoken up this entire time. So he has definitely been lurking there, watching us, keeping an eye on the things that we have been doing. When he has talked to players, he has talked about hunting and hunting them and their inner strength. In some of his dreams, he's also talked about eating the quick, the special, and the strong. So he wants to find people who he thinks are good, or perhaps even the best of the best, and then he wants to consume them and make them part of himself. This is also confirmed by Speak as One and the I Dare in some of their talks they've had with players. Speak as One himself has told me in an encounter that the 8th god considers himself a gourmet.
Really puts the gore in gourmet, huh? Am I right?
No, you're not right. Get out. Through other talks with other players, gods have mentioned that the 8th god is very similar to Speak as One in the fact that he does not care about the individual. He only cares about the collective or what you can do for him. He wants the strongest hosts so he can consume them. He does not care who it is so long as you are the strongest one. The 8th god also likes to fuel competition because he does not want to eat the weakest, he only wants to eat the strongest. Speaking more on his food tastes, the 8th god does not actually think that Speak as One or the I Dare are good enough to eat. This was stated to a player from the I Dare during an encounter where they asked the I Dare about the 8th god's relationship with Speak as One, where the I Dare then proceeded to say that the 8th god is not interested in eating Speak as One simply because he does not think that they are strong enough for him to even bother hunting. The last aspect to talk about the 8th god that is also incredibly interesting in regards to the other voices is that not only does he hunt and consume other voices, he actually takes their names from them as trophies. We do not actually know his real name at this point. We don't even know what name he's currently going by. All we know is that he takes names and he refuses to share his own. During an encounter, a voiced encounter with players, he actually refused to identify himself to them and spent most of the mission being called the measure cuts and never quite corrected them. So whatever he's doing, he likes to steal identities. True scam artist.
His true name is Ow the Edge.
And let me just cut in here, dear listeners, and let you know that no, the 8th god's name is not Ow the Edge. And that is actually just filthy lies, once more being spread by the false god's followers. When in doubt about the real god's names, just keep in mind, they're always pronounced Speak as One. So with that in mind, let's discuss the other daemons that appear in the game, or appear in mentions, not in actual physical form. Even though there's only 7 daemons on the sacrifice board, there's infinitely more out there. Some are named, but the majority of them are not, such as the unknown daemon who helped the I Dare create spoken language all the way back in the days when humans were still in caves and painting pictures on the walls. Along with there being other daemons out there, it's interesting to note that the way that daemons work is that they are defined by their names. So whenever their names change or their followers start changing their views of the daemon changes, sometimes to the point that they just become an entirely new person. Speak as One has mentioned in a talk that there are numerous versions of them that exist outside of Red Acre, and Red Acre is one of the only places that is free of these bootleg copies. The I Dare has mentioned the same thing, roughly, in a different talk. With Speak as One, they referred to bootlegs and inferior copies and knockoffs that just didn't make sense. But the I Dare was more explicit. He said that not only are there other versions of him running around outside of Red Acre, but there are other versions that are still explicitly him, older versions.
Well, speaking of that unknown god, it was actually confirmed with the I Dare to me in a chat last night that he created the word with an older version of himself, a previous name that splintered off from him.
And the I Dare gets even more interesting, because not only is he the only god who has been noted to interact with an older version of himself, but he is also, along with Speak as One of the only gods known to have fragmented himself. The idea is fragmented, both in the sense that his name was torn into shreds and he was nearly destroyed in the process, but he was also fragmented in the sense that every child who speaks to the idea is not speaking to one overwhelming entity in the way that you are with Speak as One. Instead, you're speaking to an individual facet of the idea. When you die, if you become a fragment, that specific instance of the idea is the one who holds all of the memories of your interactions and keeps track of what you're doing. When you die, that version of the idea is embedded into the fragment, and then it can be reabsorbed into the whole.
There is one more mysterious other daemon to talk about, which is, for lack of a better name, Chase the Sun. Viader has confirmed briefly in a god encounter that the gesture Chase the Sun is the name of an old god. An old missing god, a fallen sibling, he says. Although he doesn't know where Chase the Sun went, we do know that names have power, and the fact that we have this daemon's name may be something worth looking at in the future. Throughout this episode, we've talked about god encounters, which, if you're not familiar, is an instance where a god will come into your game and talk to you. You can tell when this is happening because a giant closing eye will appear on your screen. It is very hard to miss, but that's intentional. It's so that you don't miss it. When you see this giant closing eye, close your eyes, follow the prompting, and you will see words on your screen from the daemon. The daemon will talk to you, and you can talk back on voice chat or in text chat.
So god encounters are very exciting, and players are usually pretty delighted when they get them. There are a couple of rules of etiquette that you should keep in mind when you're having a god encounter, just to make sure that everyone in your game is still having fun. If you're unsure who you're talking to, first of all, you can always ask. Viader and SAO both speak in all caps. Other daemons may or may not, because we haven't seen them in text before. If you're speaking to a voiced god, then the mission objective will change to everything is fine. So if you think that somebody may be messing with you with a voice modifier or anything else, check the mission objective in the corner. People can change their voices, they can't change that. The second thing to keep in mind with god encounters is to make sure that you're not speaking over other players. If the goddess shows interest in talking to other people or other people have questions, go ahead and ask them if they can switch over to the other players. And keep in mind, if you're in a game where someone has a god encounter and they don't speak to you, there is only one god. There's usually several players. They may not get a chance to get to everyone, but eventually you will have your own chance. A third thing to keep in mind is if you're the experienced player playing with a new player, go ahead and help them understand what's happening. If everyone is freaking out around them and they don't understand the lore and they don't know what's going on, they may end up more frustrated than they do enjoying the experience. The gods will not begrudge you for taking a sidebar to explain something that they said or to explain to a new player what exactly is going on. The gods are played by the developers and they want people to enjoy their game, so it's always nice if we can do our best to help with that experience. The fourth thing and the final thing, which is not actually related to etiquette, but is just a good thing to note, be careful about saying names. Names have powers, and if you say a demon's name, it invokes them. Some voices really do not like that. Speak as One will not appreciate it if you say the idea in front of him, and the idea will not appreciate if you say Speak as One. For the best results, you should use euphemisms where possible, or just go ahead and say the letters instead of the full names. But of course, if you want to start a fight, go ahead and say the full names. See what happens.
The Blackout Club is made by Question Games. Our advertising director is Bellamy. Our transcript is by Lavanya. Audio editing is by me, Astro. Archer was our guest host. Xaviul is the fact that we drive on parkways and park on driveways.